Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Law Awareness Week at CDC 2022. This webinar tonight is part of the Law Awareness Week CDC 2022. It is a collaboration between Pro Bono S.H.E, the 5 community development councils, National University of Singapore Faculty of Law, Singapore University of Social Sciences School of Law, Singapore Management University School of Law, and the Singapore Corporate Counsel Association Pro Bono chapter, supported by the People's Association. My name is Derek Loh, and I'm your host for this webinar. Now, today's webinar is entitled Help, I'm a Victim of Online Harms. Now, first I'll go into some housekeeping matters. Now, today we'll be using the Pigeonhole Live for our Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any point in time during the webinar and also upvote on any questions that might interest you. If you have a smartphone or a tablet with you, just launch your internet browser and enter this address I'm going to read, www.pigeonhole.at into the address bar. Next, key in our event passcode, which is Law CDC 10. That's one word, Law CDC 10, as shown on the slide. Alternatively, you can click on the link shared in the chat function to launch Pigeonhole Live on your device. If you are viewing this webinar on your desktop or laptop, you should receive an invitation to launch Pigeonhole. Now, please note, very importantly, that today's session is not intended to substitute any form of professional legal advice. And if you require specific legal advice, please consult a lawyer. Now, with that, tonight, I would like to introduce our panelists for today's webinar, Ms. Simran Kaur and Ms. Christine T. Now, Ms. Simran Kaur, she's an avid proponent of fair treatment, diversity, equality, and inclusion. After spending close to 2 decades as a lawyer, Simran recently left legal practice at a Big 4 law firm to head up S.H.E, Her Empowerment Limited, SHE, a non-profit organization established in 2022 to drive women's development in Singapore. Now, Ms. Christine T, right here with me. Christine is a partner at Allen & Gledhill. Her practice is in litigation and dispute resolution with a focus on employment and investigations. Christine advises and assists in corporate investigations into employee misconduct and wrongdoing, and this includes investigations into breaches of anti-harassment policies. Christine has acted as counsel in high court suits involving allegations of harassment by ex-employees, as well as counsel in POHA, which is the Prevention of Harassment Act, court proceedings. Simran and Christine, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
You're welcome. So let's start with the basics, online harms. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the term online harms is very, very broad in scope. It can be as serious as criminal activities such as fraud, sexual misconduct, or activity that is religiously or racially offensive. Such activities such as cheating, computer misuse, outrage of modesty, these sort of things, they are generally recognizable criminal behavior that simply takes an online form. Now, we won't dwell on this for this webinar, all right? Because simply we know that such cases should be reported immediately to the authorities to take action. Instead, what we're going to focus on for this session is our discussion on the online harms that are more of a more personable nature. They create alarm and of a harassing nature. In particular, you're going to hear terms such as doxxing, cyber stalking, online falsehoods, and unauthorized sharing of intimate media. So just keep in mind that for today's webinar, when we talk about online harms, we are referring to these more personable types of harms, all right? So I just want to start off with understanding online harms more. My first question really for tonight is, how can we tell, if an online harm is being committed? When does something online, stop becoming a joke, stop becoming an opinion, and becomes harassing? Simran, can I invite you to, start the ball rolling?
Thanks, Derek. I think what you have to do really is go by your own feeling, right? So a lot of these things are a matter of degree. The types of online harm you mentioned, doxing, cyberbullying, harassment, it has to take place up to a certain level of seriousness before it then amounts to a criminal offense. So, I mean, when it comes down to day-to-day experience, you're using something is making you feel bad, you're not sure whether it amounts to an online harm or an offense. The few things you can go to try and check and say, hey, has this threshold been crossed? Am I being the victim of harmful conduct? So I think one of the first places you can go to is the community standards that each internet platform will have in place. So they'll give you some kind of guidelines on what is considered harmful, abusive, disrespectful. If you're still unclear, you can always talk to people who are your trusted advisors, like your parents or teachers. If you have a pro bono lawyer available to you at your disposal, you can check with them as well. At S.H.E, we also intend to set up a online one-stop center for online harm victims, just as a resource. So you're not sure what's happening to you, you can come get a bit of guidance, maybe talk to a pro bono lawyer, talk to a counselor, and then just figure out what steps you can take to take action or address.
I see. Okay. And Christine, do we have your view?
Okay, I mean, we look at the word online harms and we break it down into two things, right? So the online space is very broad these days. It can include person-to-person chats over WhatsApp, iMessage, Telegram, a person to multiple persons in a group chat, or even social media posts on Instagram, Facebook, forum posts, or emails. So this is the online space that we are dealing with now. And we talk about harm. So what is considered harm? I think as Simran mentioned, there comes a stage where a certain line is crossed when the content of the post or the message becomes harmful. So what this means is that it becomes harmful when it causes somebody to feel alarmed or distressed. So this can take the form of threatening messages, if it was threatening violence or dissemination of sensitive private material, or even impersonating somebody else on the online space. So I think that in a nutshell would be an easy to understand definition, I hope, of online harms.
I agree. Thank you. And I think it's very important that we point out here that the nub of it really is this concept of causing alarm and distress. And over the years we have come to realize that there are certain forms of conduct that is now kind of entrenched as criminal offenses. So we're going to go a little bit into them. Just to better understand these, let's call them categories, right? So one of them, I come across very frequently is doxxing. If we talk about doxxing, perhaps we could know more about what this is. Christine, could I?
Yes, certainly. Yeah. Okay, so I think doxing is a relatively new term. It's come into the foreground perhaps in the past 4 to 5 years. It essentially means to release personal identity information on a person or somebody who's related to the target person, and potentially inciting violence or inviting people to target that person.
So there's that risk of that person suffering harm from anywhere because this perpetrator has made it known to others of the address. I see. Okay. And closely related to that is cyber stalking. Simran, could you let us have an idea of what would encompass cyber stalking?
I think cyber stalking really it covers a few kind of scenarios where there's a continued course of conduct, where you may be following the victim, engaging in a course of communications with the victim even online, or sending them a certain type of messages or sharing messages about their location online. I think that's really how most people experience cyber stalking.
Yeah.
Which again is an offense under the
Absolutely.
legislation.
Yeah. And then sometimes I guess maybe the categories muddle. We hear also cyberbullying. So is cyberbullying an umbrella term, or I don't think it's a recognized offense, but could any of you have any idea on what it could encompass? Perhaps Christine,
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that cyberbullying would be more of an umbrella term. Of course, when you write a message or you post it in a forum, where maybe all your classmates or your schoolmates or your colleagues can read this message. It's intended to embarrass a particular person. That would, in essence, amount to cyberbullying. In a perhaps easier to understand sort of analogy, it's like playground bullying when people gang up against one person, but you translate that to an online space.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think people can be very creative these days. And
Yes.
really, the different kinds of bullying that can take place are, excluding you from a group consistently, for example, blaming you, calling you different kinds of names, harassing you repeatedly, sending repeated messages. And sometimes it's a combination of everything, right?
Yeah.
So really, I think it's quite fact specific. So you have to really look at what's happening to you in the individual case. Let's see whether it's reached the degree that it's amounts to bullying.
Absolutely. Now, the thing about what we're talking about, I like that playground example that was given because, where we talk about criminal offenses such as theft, such as robbery, the harm is immediately known. There's loss of property, there's injury, physical injury. But when we talk about online harms, how serious is it? How serious can it get? Is it really something that we should take notice of? I just, perhaps give us an idea, Simran.
Yeah, I mean, the anecdotal evidence we have is that people can take it very badly, right? It's an emotional effect, it's a mental effect, and it can be long lasting. But if I'm not mistaken, there isn't any local specific or publicly available data to track, okay, how long term these effects can be.
Yeah.
So you're bullied, but sometimes the effect can last with you for years, right? You have an intimate image of your body shared online. Again, the effect can last for years. It may actually have an effect where 30 years down the line, you want to apply to, let's say, a member of parliament, and you can't. Because this trail can never be erased. So I think we really are only at the cusp of trying to understand how bad and long lasting the harm can actually be. And once we do have a better understanding, then maybe we can think about, are we trying to regulate this enough? Are we being strict enough, in the sentences that we're imposing?
Christine,
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not the psychological expert here.
sure.
And I mean, there aren't any statistics, but I think what we can see in our day-to-day interaction, or at least in my interaction with victims of online harm, you see it take a very real impact toll on their day-to-day life. I mean, it's constantly on their mind. You are worried, you're looking over your shoulder to wonder when's the next time you're going to receive a message. And for those of them who do go on to the legal route, legal proceedings also sometimes can take a toll in terms of just having to speak to your lawyer, rehash, and think about the entire ordeal again and again.
Now, I'm going to play a bit of a devil's advocate here. And I'm going to look at it from the alleged, perpetrator's perspective, right? He could be a mischievous lad, creates memes and sees himself as, or herself, as expressing themselves online. What would you tell a would-be perpetrator to guide this person on? What do you think? When is he really crossing the line? Simran, Christine, could I have your view?
Yeah. Well, I think from a legal point of view, the threshold under the POHA legislation is words, behavior, or communication that causes harassment, alarm, or distress. I know that's a mouthful and it's very unclear perhaps what exactly this constitutes, but I think it necessarily must be evaluated in each case. So from the perpetrators or alleged perpetrators' perspective, surely yes, he or she is entitled to express opinions. And if they are truly held or strongly felt, you can express your strong opinions. But I think when it crosses the line, it becomes something which is a half-truth, a complete untruth, or just communication which is unwanted. And I think one way that an alleged perpetrator can try to think of it would be placing himself or herself in the shoes of the intended recipient. And not just saying, oh, I will be okay with it if I'm in his or her shoes, but taking on the mindset, emotional, mental of the intended recipient and feeling what he or she would feel. And if that's the test, and if there is any inkling that the words or the communication or behavior is something which is unwanted, then I think that crosses the line.
Yeah, and I very much echo what you said just now, Christine, which is really applying empathy, right, to your interactions online. And I mean, to be fair, most of us, as lay users of the internet, we aren't legally trained, or we're not aware of what the law says and when I'm technically crossing some threshold. I think a really good rule of thumb, and picking up on that point of empathy, is really just apply the good neighbor principle, right? I don't act in a way that can negatively impact those around me, or in a way that I wouldn't like to be the recipient of that type of behavior. And I think as a general rule of thumb of conduct on the internet, that should be a helpful starting point for you to not cross any lines, whether intentionally or unintentionally. But of course, I think that's just a broad rule of thumb, right? What would really help people understand when they are nearing a threshold or crossing a threshold and actually committing an offense, right, would be public education. So there are quite a few resources out there for people to go to try and get a better understanding of what's right and what's wrong in terms of causing the harm. I think, Media Literacy Council, National Library Board also does something. So the Brown has a website, she has a website as well. So I think in doubt, apply the empathy principle and the neighbor principle. Still in doubt, go check the website. Still in doubt,
Yes,
go talk to the lawyer.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But yeah,
Clearly, empathy, and then the neighbor principle. These are tenets that good rules of thumb for us to live by and actually embrace the new online world. Now, if we go a little further into the offenses, just to let the would-be perpetrators get an idea of how legally, the offenses are being seen. Can we generally talk about what kind of punishment the offenders are likely to receive if they are convicted of an online harm? Simran, could I have your view?
Actually, maybe I'll let Christine go first.
Oh,
So she can
sorry,
give the
sorry.
hard facts and
Absolutely,
figures, and then
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
can talk about
Absolutely.
the-
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes, Christine,
The
please.
bearer of all these
All the
very
legal-
harsh.
the penalties.
Well, I
yeah.
think there are several offenses under POHA, and just as a broad range, you could face a fine of up to $5,000 or a jail term of between 6 or up to 6 or even 12 months, depending on the exact POHA offense. And I think for very egregious or very serious cases, it can be a combination of a fine as well as a period of imprisonment. So I did some research before this
Thank you.
seminar, and I mean, there's a whole range of cases just earlier this year in 2022, and I saw short imprisonment terms for a few weeks and up to several months even for very serious cases.
I see. Okay.
So now we are going to go a little further into this topic. Okay, we're going to talk about the measures that can be taken, in the face of online harms. So I want to focus a bit on the victims here. If you think you are a victim of an online harm, who should you talk to if you find that someone is bullying you online, bullying in the broad sense, Simran?
Sure. This time I'll take your question.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've done quite a lot of youth engagement sessions. This organization I was in for the Sunlight AFA,
I see.
focusing on
Sunlight,
online Alliance for Actually, focusing on online harms, particularly gender-based online harms. But what happened was we found out that a lot of young people experience online harms. Maybe something like 3 in 4. There's a figure that was published recently that experienced bullying. But the thing is, these are young people. When it happens to them, they either don't realize it's happening to them because
Right.
it's become so normalized and out there that this kind of thing everybody also experiences. What is it really harmful? That's one part. The second part is even if they do block things, making them feel bad or it's harmful, they'll think, well, I don't really want to tell my parents because they won't understand. You don't have the same expertise and comfort in this online space.
Yeah.
And I do, I think I'm better placed to handle it myself. But fair enough, but that makes things a lot harder for you. You really don't have to be ashamed of it or try to handle it yourself. It may not be as simple as you think to try and get redress.
Yes.
Right. So there are so many avenues for help. You can speak to teachers. I think MOE has put out a statement within the last year or so to say teachers receive training on online forms. So they'll be well aware of their students' experiencing these kind of things. Parents will always be willing to help, a trusted friend and the auntie or someone like that. Or as I said, something like the S.H.E One-Stop Center would be a resource for you to call up and get some answers and support. We have counselors available as well for you to talk to. So I really don't think that you feel like you should handle it yourself or that you're expected to handle it yourself.
But it's quite the mental barrier to, I suppose, with young adults or the younger generation, basically, to try and put aside the embarrassment and reach out for.
Yeah, I mean, well, then it requires a bit of a mindset shift, right? If you are the victim, you should feel no shame in it because you're not the one that's done anything. But I can understand that it takes a sexual element, for example.
Yes.
I would feel like I'm amplifying my embarrassment by bringing it to the attention of someone else. I mean, obviously, that's something you really should keep in mind. We don't want you to feel extra stressed about what you're trying to do just to go after the victim. So when you are ready and when you're comfortable, go to someone you trust. But I think in the meantime, while you're trying to get comfortable, you can take a few proactive steps, which is take screenshots, maybe keep a log. Then when you reach the point where you're comfortable to share, at least you have some evidence.
So
To
document
share, to document
harm.
it, keep a log,
Yes.
and then when you feel ready to, I mean, there are a lot of evidence to share.
And there's no real time pressure, right? It's not like I must report something in a month or 2 months or a year, that kind of thing.
I suppose the earlier you do it, the better because your recollection of the surrounding events will be fresher. But if you're not ready, as I say, you keep a good log of some details and screenshot and types and content of what people are saying, then that's helpful. Because I know in a lot of cases, the temptation is, so unpleasant, you the person, block the person.
Yeah.
And if you do that, it protects you, but then you cannot then take the screenshots that you need. So you may have to have a bit of clarity of thinking there, which it's a challenge when you're feeling emotional.
Yeah.
But like I said, that trusted advisor could tell you, give you that guidance. Hey, before you delete, there's some evidence. So they have the cool head when you may be stuck in emotion.
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the internet websites like Instagram, Facebook. So you were touching on the gathering of evidence portion, and this is quite relevant, I felt. So what can I do? In what circumstances can I leverage on what Instagram or Facebook have to offer to take down unwanted posts or basically cut that harmful conduct?
Yeah, so I think nowadays, all these internet platforms have a good appreciation that all our users want to be safe and respected online, right?
Yeah.
If they want to use our platform, we're going to try and create the rules of engagement that allow this to be the case. So they have their community guidelines, and most of them will have a quite straightforward reporting function within the app. So you have to go there, cite some basic information, maybe cite the community rule that you think has been breached, let's say harassment. Then give some evidence, and then they will process it. So from what I understand, the difficulty they have in processing these things is sometimes there's not enough evidence given for them to understand, is this really harassment? Because as we talked about earlier, it's a question of degree, right? If you give one screenshot, how does the person processing your application know that it's taken place over a year? You have to write a bit of a story, explain something, or if you've been called a name, like little red face, it doesn't sound good to somebody else, but in the context of your past relationship with this person, it was a phrase that was used to really insult you. So you have to give that context. Yeah, then it really helps these internet platforms to process and take the right kind of action.
And there's this subjectivity to it because you have to be prepared for these internet companies to disagree with your complaint, right? So sometimes in the little basic research that I did, there are people who out there say that the technology companies, they don't seem to care about online bullying and harassment. So in terms of these reporting functions, do you come across and are you able to give perhaps your own view on whether these tech companies, are they being held responsible enough, or sufficiently responsible towards their users?
I think it's unfair to say that it's not, interested. A lot of them have put in these safety features in place, and they've been quite keen to partner with us at S.H.E as well, at our online farm center, to say, hey, we're happy to, put up maybe public education to say this is how you can use our app safely.
Yeah.
This is how you can utilize all the safety features. So I think they're quite invested in it. I also know that they, instead of just waiting to receive a report, they also proactively look around to see what they can find and then promote content that they can easily see, right? Is a harm. So something like harassment can be a bit difficult, or bullying can be a bit difficult, unless very clear death threats that they can objectively pick up as harmful, right? I think what we can do is probably try to work with them more closely at this center and really just put out information to the public to say, if you'd like to use these platforms, they have all these features, we feel we're using them to maximize your safety and experience.
In fact, yes, it sounds like multiple nodes or a network of help that one should turn to. So I don't have to go directly to the internet companies. I can turn to, say, S.H.E.
Yes.
Get a view, a trusted friend, get a view, and then,
That's right. It's not something you have to handle alone.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people with knowledge and skills out there. What we're trying to do actually is try to put all these people together under one roof. So you call, you get, put through to the right person.
Yes.
So, if I'm the trusted advisor, right, and I have a friend and I want to help my friend, report a case of cyberbullying that, I feel strongly, look, this person is really suffering this online harm, but they don't want to do it, what can I, as one of these friends, trusted advisors, do? Christine, perhaps, could have your view.
Okay, so I mean, it's great, like, to have people like you who can act as a trusted friend. And clearly, I think between friends, we show care and concern for each other. That's entirely understandable. I think ultimately, of course, as Simran said earlier, it is up to the victim who has suffered the harm, in his or her own time, to come out and put forward the report if he or she wants to. In the meantime, as a trusted friend with a cool head, you can help tremendously in information gathering process, in taking the screenshots, preserving the evidence. You can also do research, on the community guidelines for that particular platform. Is there a particular portal or link that you can click on? What is the community standard that is being breached? Or even offer options. I mean, your friend may not know that he or she has all these resources available to him or her, whether it's SHE, counseling, so on and so forth. So just being a friend, offer listening ear, offering the options and the support if necessary.
I think to that, I'll also add a different layer, right? Which is that bystanders somewhat have an obligation to call out this conduct.
Yes.
If you really want to improve the whole environment, to some degree, victims tend to be cowed and silent because we've discussed that it's a very difficult time for them. So they may not actually report anything, right? But if people seeing it happen, speak up and report it, then collectively you sort of shift the culture towards, okay, certain things are not unacceptable. And if I type it, I pretty much know that I'm not going to get away with it. 20 people are going to report when we kick off that.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think to that degree, we all have a little bit of a
Absolutely. Absolutely. Trying to facilitate that culture. That really should be a goal that we aim towards.
Now, let's say, right, with all these, so far we've been going into the self-help side of things. But we all know it's no promise that it'll work. If it fails and we decide that we want to go to the authorities, I just wonder here, if it is going to be different, a different kind of mode of reporting. So if I want to make a police report, what should I consider before doing that? How do I go about it? That'll be that'll be helpful to know. And Christine, could I turn to you?
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of how you go about doing it,
Yeah.
so clearly there's the physical option. You can go down to a police post. And nowadays you can even lodge police reports online if you feel that you don't want to go down and speak to an officer at the first instance, right? Of course, in terms of what you need for the police report, I think easy question to ask yourself is who, what, when, where, why, how, right? So when did this take place? Was it over one day, several days, several weeks, months, years? What happened? How did you feel? You know, the date, time, preserve the evidence if there are screenshots that you took, a journal log that you made. All this would be relevant, and I would encourage you to bring it along to the police station, so show it to the police officer so that he or she can put together a very comprehensive report as to what happened.
And you know, I suppose the police aren't the only avenue. There's also the PHC, the Protection Against Harassment Center, where these things can be done. You know, I've spoken about self-help measures, so I'm going to jump to talking about the stuff that's offered under the Prevention of Harassment Act, the protection orders, expedited protection orders that are available if you go down to the PHC. Just to give an idea to our audience, how hard is it to get one? How long is it? Does it cost a lot? You know, generally, if I could find out more, Christine.
Okay, so in terms of perhaps just to address, is it difficult to get? I wouldn't say yes, it's difficult. Of course, it depends on what exactly is being complained about, what protection is being sought, right? So it's again a case-by-case basis. If you are able to demonstrate the need, especially in cases where violence is imminent, I think that's when protection orders will be granted. In terms of how fast it can be granted, for expedited protection orders, it can take as quick as 24 hours or up to 72 hours. For 24 hours, that would be cases where there is an element of violence involved. It doesn't cost very much to make an application. My understanding is it costs about $30 to file an application online. Yes. So you don't even have to go down to the state courts to file the application. It can be done via a portal online.
Online, right?
And well, does the protection order cover only me? And does it, can I report on behalf of a group of us that are affected by it?
Oh, I think I don't think you would have to apply on your behalf.
I see.
Yeah.
Right.
It's personal to you, and of course, if there are other people who would need
affected.
an order as well, it's open to them to do so.
Now, you know, when we talk about
taking out something like seeking a protection order, expedited protection order, it's no longer just making a police report, you know. And when we think about it, I guess it becomes very personal to the individual. You know, what are the drawbacks personally of taking things to court, you know, or to the police? Are there any drawbacks if I make a report? Because it may not be that I get the order that I want, right? So maybe I don't get an order, a judge is decided against me. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Yeah. Christine, could I hear from you?
Yeah, well, I think perhaps the biggest drawback when it comes to escalating matters, whether it is to court or the police, is that it is somewhat taken out of your hands. So if you make a police report, you can't dictate or control how fast, how slow, or how the police investigate. You can't say, police officer, I want you to look into A, B, and C. That's not what's going to happen. The police have the discretion to decide what they want to investigate, how they want to investigate. Of course, for the court cases, it's possible to withdraw certain applications. In this day and age, people are encouraged to consider how to amicably resolve matters. So that's also an option that is open. I think all along, I mentioned earlier that you have to have this case perhaps hanging over your head, something that you carry with you on a day-to-day basis. And that can be something that takes a real emotional toll. So I think those are real factors that you would like to consider in deciding what avenues of help and recourse that you want to go down.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, it's very important as you point out. It's not really all or nothing. There are multiple avenues. There's a possibility for mediated settlements, that sort of thing. Simran, any views on that?
I think to what Christine said, I would just add that court proceedings take the time that they take.
Yes.
Right, so it may take a year, it may take 2 years to complete, and if you're doing a full trial, it maybe even 3.
Yeah.
So until the time that the police can bring that perpetrator to justice, you don't see the justice, right? There's no outcome. But then of course you have more immediate concerns like, hey, my perpetrator is still online harassing me, or my intimate picture is still online. So actually, what I would want to say to this is really, yes, you can go the court route. But then there's also something that needs to be done currently, which is dealing with the in-app reports and trying to address what's happening in real time, because that's obviously causing the day-to-day.
Yes.
So you want to try and stop that by making an in-app report, and of course, let the police focus on catching the perpetrator for what is already done.
Yeah. You know, from all that I'm hearing so far, it sounds like really prevention is far, far better than cure.
No, I would agree. It's
Yeah.
very important. Yeah.
And anyone in their right frame of mind would, do their best to avoid having to go down the route of, reporting to the police or even approaching the PHC itself. So if we talk about prevention, we dial it back a bit, are there any, online anti-bullying tools for, in particular, children and young people? What's a good rule of thumb for us to operate online? Simran, can I get your further view on this?
I mean, other than the labor principle and empathy, which I've already mentioned, I think really we have to start quite young, because people start venturing into the online space now in primary school easily, So even before primary 1, I would say educate for them, it has to take place at home. Just some basic principles. Right, then in schools, I think most schools have their own individual programs for teaching digital wellness and how to behave online. But then there are, some companies in Singapore, there's something called CyberBullying books that I know of. They come up with little, books and guides on how to use the space online. They offer training programs. So if you're interested, you can sign your children up for those, just to let them have a little more detailed understanding of what they can expect to face when they venture out into
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I think education, it should be maybe a core curriculum actually on how to maneuver in the online space, before giving them that
It's a
access.
fundamental life skill now, given the amount of time we spend online. I know I get a weekly report every day, 7 hours or whatever. It's really, it's the third of the day, or more than a third of the day.
Yeah, I think fair. We are online for that amount of time. Okay, now we've spoken about all these things that are out there, and perhaps to aid our understanding further, we would go into some scenarios itself to try and see how these things can be applied. Now at this stage, I would like to remind our participants who are online and viewing this session that you can continue to post your questions for our panelists via Pigeonhole, and we'll address them later after these scenarios are played out. So let's look at our first scenario, which is on doxing. All right. Now I'll just quickly read out the scenario for everyone. So Greta, she took a photo of a boy she saw not wearing a mask on the bus, and she posted it on her social media with the following caption: "Wow, some people are honestly so irresponsible. Doesn't he know that we still must wear masks on public transport? Everyone, please mask up. I don't want to get COVID just because I take the bus home." And with a post like this, some anonymous citizens have dug up the boy's details from his Facebook account to his school and other details and posted these details on an online forum. So what can the boy do in this situation? Have a think about this. And Christine, if I could just ask your views on this.
Okay, so I think what is concerning or troubling about this scenario is the anonymous netizens who dug up the boy's details posted them on an online forum. So this potentially could amount to the offence of doxxing, which is an offence under Section 3, 1 sub C of Protection from Harassment Act. In terms of what the boy can do, of course, I mean, we talk about this is a potential offence, but the boy is not going to want to, run to the court of police officer immediately. What can he do in terms of immediate steps, right? If he is very traumatized, is concerned, he should raise the matter to a trusted advisor or a mentor, whether it's his own parents, a teacher, or even a senior at school. If he is able to do so, it could be an option for him to respond, given that people know who he is, with his side of the story. Was there any legitimate reasons for not wearing a mask? Or even consider flagging the post to Facebook or the forum on which it is posted and asking for it to be removed. So I think there are a range of options that he can take. Doesn't necessarily need to run straight to court or the police. Hopefully it can be contained and Rita realizes that she made a mistake.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Christine.
I mean, to that, I just wanted to add some thoughts, which is that I think to make out an offence of doxing, you need to have intended to cause harassment, alarm, or distress, or fear of violence, right? So it's really what is Rita's intention when she made this post. So she can say, no, I didn't intend. I was just stating a fact. He's not wearing his mask. Everybody please mask up. Everybody wants to get COVID. These are facts. But then you also have to look at the surrounding incidents of what's been happening at that time, because it's also enough for Rita to have committed an offence if she should have known that posting something like this would cause harassment, fear, or fear of violence. Because, say for example, for the last 3 months, every time a similar post goes up, that person gets beaten up. So, and
Yes.
it's all been very public. So you know that the likelihood is, if I post something like this, it's going to cause this person to fear that he's also going to get beaten up, right? So fear of violence. So I think you really have to look at the surrounding facts to see whether something amounts to doxing. But of course, stepping back again, something that is purely just a statement of fact, like in a news report, right, will not be doxing to say this person was seen at this place on this time without a mask.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, if we say that
Rita, she had taken the photo, but she had, I'm just playing the devil's advocate game here,
Yeah.
right? And she had blurred the image of the boy, and to a level that she felt, okay, no one's going to recognize him. That would actually be fine. Would that be the case? Would Simran, could I?
It would help her to say that, okay, my intention was to actually not out him. It would be helpful for her. But of
Yeah.
course, if you posted, his face, then his school uniform, then it's like bus number 3 outside Ang Mo Kio, then you can
Those are-
really
yeah,
like narrow
Yeah,
down
that's
the likelihood that this
absolutely
person's
identified.
going to named.
And actually, if she went to take the trouble to mask an identity, actually isn't that the sort of conduct that we want to see online, that you're wary that you're causing someone harm? I mean, as a starting set, that may not necessarily be the best, I suppose, but the fact that we get the community to start thinking about these issues, that would be a step in the right direction, I suppose. Simran?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but then again, it depends how you want to comment on it. So let's say Greta just had only good intentions, right?
Absolutely.
Could she have phrased it a little more neutrally to say, hey, doesn't he know that we must still wear? How come this guy doesn't know? So as Christine mentioned, the guy may just forgotten.
Yeah.
And why put him in that situation, right? So if you just want to say, look, there are still people out there on buses that are forgetting to put on their mask. Everybody, please remember to mask up today. That's far more neutral, and it's not targeted at one specific person.
Agreed.
So I think you can just exercise a little bit of care in what you're saying about this picture.
Yes.
So I mean, the same point, Rita can make the same point without posting the photo of the boy, whether or not it is blurred out or not.
Yeah.
Right? And if her true intention is to make sure that people on the bus with her are safe from COVID, it is open to her to go up to the boy and say, boy, I think you forgot to wear your mask. Does anybody have a spare mask?
Yeah.
That solves the problem rather than posting and naming and shaming.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So that's scenario one, doxing. Now, if we move on to another scenario, and this one's about cyberbullying now. Let's hear on this one. Sky, a social media influencer, suspected that her boyfriend is cheating on her when she saw a guy behaving intimately with another girl. She took a photo of the couple and went ahead to post a flaming post on her social media. And because she's a social media influencer, many of her followers wanted to support her and started attacking the couple. They dug out the girl's details, started berating her on her social media and mobile. The girl was shocked as the photo was of her, but she knew that Sky had mistaken the identity of a boyfriend. So, in this case, what can the girl do in this situation? Simran, could I turn to you?
In terms of, I think she's going to experience something that is quite intense because there'll be a really high number of nasty posts and actions taken against her. So really, I would say, of course, self-interested, but the online harms one-stop center, we will have a helpline. So you may not have to come down. You can just call and give some initial information. And then the person on the line will be a trained counselor, give you some initial support because you probably need it. It sounds like a very stressful scenario. Then they can make an appointment for you to come down for the counseling or to see a pro bono lawyer. And then that lawyer will give you some advice on your rights and the steps to take. Within all these steps, and I suppose there's many involved in all this retaliation. And then, of course, advise you whether a offense has been filed, to file a police report, maybe even help you with that.
Christine?
Could I tap on your knowledge on this?
Well, I mean, I'm in agreement with what Simran has said. In relation to Sky, right? If she has found out that she's mistaken the identity of the boyfriend, what can she do? So to me, she can do two things, right? She can own up. She has made a mistake. It has caused somebody harm. Her own followers have started berating this unknown, otherwise innocent girl on social media. So it's to say, clarify the situation. I mean, there's no, it's courageous to own up to your mistake. In addition to that, vis-a-vis the girl in question, if there is a way to reach out to her to acknowledge, apologize, I think it goes a long way, even from the girl's perspective. That, okay, there's been a harm caused, I have suffered, but at least there's been some acknowledgement of the hurt that I'm going through.
Yes.
Actually, the interesting question here is really, Sky can say, all I did was make one post. I don't have this like course of conduct, conduct over time to amount to bullying. I just did one thing. I stated what I believe was a fact. Not my problem that all my followers went over this. So again, it really comes down to if you are an influencer, right, and you've got followers, what is your expectation of how these people are going to react to your post? Really, what did you think was going to happen? Would they all just read it, press a like, and then move on with their lives? No, right? It's very, and you can see from past examples that something like this would happen. So is it as a collective, acting together? Would you say, Christine, that Sky has also been part of this cyberbullying effort?
I would say, I mean, as a influencer, I think she needs to appreciate that your actions have consequences. If you have more followers, there is a likelihood that your followers will feel very strongly about you, your life, what you had for breakfast, lunch, dinner, where you went shopping. They are going to take action on it.
So let's say Sky apologizes, say I got it wrong. What would, this girl, would she still be able to have a case of cyberbullying?
Potentially, yes. I mean, I don't think cyberbullying would necessarily be limited to, it happened over a short period of time, harm has a remedy. I think it goes towards the extent of the harm caused, and that can be calibrated in terms of what is the remedy that is granted. Perhaps if Sky has already apologized, taken down the post, told her followers that it was a mistake, then one can say that the harm in question has already sort of been extinguished and there's no need to give a protection order or expedite protection order.
And it's interesting because when we talk about social media influencers, we expect them, since they're on the online space more often, to have a higher standard, to think further about the effects of their posts and what their followers might do with their posts.
So if they're an influencer, they're supposed to influence people positively only.
Positively, absolutely. We try that. But yes, very, very valid points, I believe. Now I want to take it to the next scenario, which is closely related to what we've discussed so far, and that's cyber stalking. All right. In this scenario, we look at Choi. Choi's relationship with his girlfriend, Lien, has soured. Now, in an attempt to patch things up, Choi texts her daily, but she ignores his messages. Choi starts to get impatient, starts sending messages via all her social media platforms. He threatens to appear at Lien's office if she continues ignoring him. Choi also starts to enlist his friends to write to Lien via her social media to plead for Lien to forgive Choi and get back together. They also post photos of the couple on their social media, and they tag her at every opportunity. So prior to ignoring him, Lien will reply with one-word responses, hoping to show Choi her reluctance to continue communicating with him. So Lien is the victim here. What can she do? Can Lien perhaps file a police report for cyber stalking? Simran?
Yeah, so I mean, it looks like there is a cause of conduct, since it's like actions that have taken place over time, which is a prerequisite. And cyber stalking is an offense under the Protection from Harassment Act. I think really, again, it comes down to the intention of Choi. Does he intend by these acts to cause her harassment or alarm or distress? I mean, it's really individual, right? Choi should know what his girlfriend Lien or ex-girlfriend is like, and what kind of feelings she would have to this type of behavior. It does, I mean, from my personal view, sound quite oppressive because he's enlisting his friends to write to her, you know, and also posting photos. So yeah, I think it's very possible. I mean, if she's not sure, she can again seek the help of a trusted advisor before filing the report. But it does seem to qualify.
Christine?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree as well. So, I mean, with Choi, you know, getting his friends to post or write to Lien, there is this element of incitement there. And what does he intend by getting them to help? If he truly wanted to get back to her with her, potentially it doesn't need to be done by posting or tagging her at every opportunity. I think if that was the true intention, it can be manifested in a positive way.
I think the interesting thing here, and really it's just a interpersonal issue, is that when someone is stalking you or harassing you, right? Sometimes people think to engage them in just one word, like, no, stop it. It's going to help them go away. But really what they are looking for is that engagement. Even that one word is enough to help encourage them to continue. So, I mean, really, sometimes just clean cut or silence is the best solution to really make them go away. You're not feeding them.
No, can I just, again, I just want to play devil's advocate here. If let's say you were advising Lien and she had proceeded with a POHA report or something of that nature, and mediation is recommended, right? And she feels, oh no, I got to see his face. I really don't want to meet him, but it might almost be playing into what he wants, you know? What would you advise in terms of trying to mediate the dispute? Perhaps, Simran, any views on that?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I really think that mediation may be advised, but it's by agreement, right?
Yeah.
So both sides really have to feel comfortable. Like, she doesn't have to agree to it if she's not comfortable with it. It will result in some form of a consent order. Like, at the end of the day, something that's negotiated. He agrees to conduct himself this way, and she agrees to conduct himself this way. But I think she really should talk it through with the people who know her best. Absolutely. Because, I mean, like I said, it's best to cut off contact. Then the mediation also prolongs the contact and gives him this chance to talk to her. Who knows, he'll make the mediation last like 10 sessions, right? Yeah. So you know each other best. It really is an interpersonal issue. So you really have to talk to people that know you. Yeah. And try and get some guidance on how best to proceed. So it's not always the case that mediation is
not always.
Help. Yeah, not
yeah,
always.
and I think it's crucial here to point out that mediation is an entirely voluntary process.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Yeah, Christine.
So, I mean, I think mediation can be considered. Of course, if Lien is open to it, I think it will definitely be very difficult to face Choi and her reluctance to attend mediation and the concerns that she has is entirely understandable. So all the concerns that Simran raised, I fully agree. But of course, perhaps on a more objective point of view, this mediation session, yes, it would be difficult to go through, but if she is able to think of it as, okay, this is my real attempt to try to bring closure. Yeah, if we can reach some sort of a settlement at the end of the mediation as to how each party is going to conduct himself and herself, that would actually give her the solution that she wants, which is hopefully a closure to move on with life. But of course, I mean, if neither party can reach an agreement, then perhaps further sessions or the 9 sessions may not be suitable.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So thank you very much, Simran and Christine, for your time tonight. At this juncture, you know, I want to bring some of our audience's questions to you and have your views on them. Now, I have with me a number of questions, and one very popular question that I'm seeing is, what if the perpetrator is from overseas? Okay, how to seek help and redress. Now, it's not about the perpetrator being anonymous, it's the perpetrator being overseas. So how do we help a victim here?
So technically speaking, under the penal code, many types of offences, okay, many types
Yes.
of online harms. Many types of offences can be, if you can be treated as having committed offence even if you're overseas, right? In the same way as you're treated in Singapore. So that's the technical legal position. But the practical point is that if the person is overseas, how am I going to A, find him, B, extradite him, get him over here in order to prosecute him for the case? So it's tougher. I mean, really, it's a fair point. Nowadays, there's a lot of cross-jurisdictional communications online, right? We may well have to think of a better solution for this in terms of trying to locate people who are harming you severely from overseas, so that we don't fall into this practical pitfall of, yes, we know who he is and where he is, but it's a bit tough to do anything about it here.
So I think from a police or court's perspective, it might be more challenging to deal with a perpetrator who's overseas. But if the internet platforms like Facebook or Instagram, I don't think, Simran can correct me if I'm wrong, that if you report, it doesn't matter where the perpetrator is located, because the platform would still have the power to perhaps remove or take down the post.
Yeah, but taking down the post, I think the platform does have that power. But if I guess you are looking for court redress, then the difficulties again will arise.
See. Okay. Now, another question is about gaslighting. Broadly speaking, is online harm broadly defined as doxing or gaslighting that has crossed into the offline space? Actually, so would gaslighting basically be similar to what we're talking about tonight? Gaslighting online being, if I'm not wrong, all right, it's where the victim here is being made out to be the perpetrator of something. Yeah. So would that be similar to being cyberbullied or harassed?
You want to take that, Christine?
Christine?
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, I think first maybe for some of our audience, we might need to define what gaslighting is. So I just did a quick Google. It says it's a form of psychological manipulation where an abuser tries to sow self-doubt or confusion. So I think this can take the form of messages or forum posts that attack a particular person, distorts that person's reality. And I think, yes, it could amount to cyberbullying or even doxing if the personal details of the subject are disclosed with the intention to direct people to cause violence or make further unwanted remarks towards this person.
Okay. I have another question here, which is more on the legal spectrum, which is more prosecutable. I suppose easier to bring an action against? Is it online harms or is it libel, meaning defamation? Simran, would you want to try this one?
Well, as far as I understand it, libel is a civil cause of action. So
Yes.
you don't really prosecute someone for that. And there is an offense called criminal defamation, where you have to, I mean, I don't have the provisions before me. You have to prove certain things. It involves, I guess, also the intention of the publisher at the time of publishing. So I really, I mean, whether something is prosecutable or not really depends whether there's evidence of that. So you can't say an offense is easier to, one offense is easier to pick out than another.
Yeah.
It really is a question of proving the person's mindset, right? And having the evidence. So to do that, I think you just have to have all evidence and circumstantial account of the context ready. And I suppose you take that to the prosecutor, and as long as they believe that there's a reasonable basis for making out this offense and achieving a conviction, they would, I presume, take it to court.
Christine.
I mean, I think the decision whether or not to prosecute would be taken by the police in conjunction with the Attorney General's chambers. So I don't think it would be accurate to say that one particular offense is more prosecutable than another. But I think in recent years, what we do know is that there have been a fair number of hoo-ha offences which have been resulted in prosecutions and convictions.
Okay. I have here a question that I think, Simran, it's for you. It's, can males approach she for help, or does she only help females?
No, we don't turn anyone. So of course they can. We will help everyone who talks to our dogs.
Yes.
Our focus really is on women and girls, especially in that we want to try and study and understand gender-based online harms a little bit better. Women experience online harms a little more acutely or frequently, certain types of harms, right? Like non-consensual intimate image sharing rarely happens to men. Revenge porn rarely
Yes.
happens to men. So they suffer in a certain way. We're trying to study the harm, how it affects them. We won't turn anyone away. If you'd like to call us, please do. We'll help you.
Absolutely. That's very, very heartening to know.
Okay. So there's one question here which is about timelines, which is for harassment cases, how does the statute of limitations apply for harassment cases or Limitation Act in Singapore? So is there a time period, I suppose, for harassment offences?
Okay, so from what I understand,
Yeah.
If it's a criminal offense in Singapore, there is no
No.
limitation period to speak of.
Yeah.
Right, this is unlike a civil claim where there might be a period of say 3 or 6 years, which you will need to file your claim in court. But that said, I think the sooner you file your claim or your complaint, the fresher your memory is, your recollection, the evidence is there. So that helps in the chances of success, really getting the order or the remedy that you want.
And I suppose there'll be some doubt really in your case if you bring an action 5 years later and say that, oh, I got alarm and distress then, and I'm only bringing the action 5 years down the road.
The unfortunate truth, but that's the presumption.
Yeah.
But I think what we're trying to do is try to change the perception of it's because you're telling an untruth that you waited so long. Sometimes it can be because you were suffering so much.
Yeah.
That you waited so long.
Yes, that's another view too.
Okay. Now on anonymity, right? So there's this question here. If the harassment is on social media and is using fake accounts, by the suspect, but the victim is pretty certain about who the suspect is, right? What can we do to help the police to gather evidence to charge the suspect? I'm going to broaden the question. What can we do under POHA, if it's an anonymous account on social media?
Well, I think
Christine.
The fact that it's an anonymous account does not necessarily preclude you seeking a POHA remedy. If there is strong evidence to suggest or link a person to these anonymous accounts, I think in terms of perhaps the followers, the likes, the way of writing, these can be points that can be highlighted to the authorities or the court. Of course, there might need to be further evidence left to technical experts or the police officers to try to get information perhaps from the platforms itself as to who is behind this anonymous account.
Okay.
Simran, any views on that? Or
No, I mean, if you already have a pretty good suspicion that this person, anonymous account is a certain person, I mean, that's based on information you have, right? So it's a question of presenting that to the court in your application to say, these are the cogent and strong reasons why I believe the anonymous account belongs to a certain person. And then I suppose in the court proceedings, you will have to explain why none of that is true.
yeah, I see. Okay. I have one more question here, which is I thought was quite good about the protection order. This question is, how is the protection order from the under POHA, how is it enforced? So if they get it, what can the victim do? What will happen to the perpetrator?
Well, so if somebody manages to obtain a protection order from court,
Yeah.
it is it carries the weight like any other court order, right? So it has to be obeyed. And if the person on the receiving end of this protection order fails to obey the court order, the victim can raise this to the court, says you have this, the perpetrator has disobeyed the court order. He or she needs to be punished or reminded to comply. Or the court might remind or perpetrator that he or she needs to abide by this order. It carries weight, and if he doesn't, he could be liable to an imprisonment sentence.
Okay. I think one last question, and this is a scenario-based question, and it's received some votes. And that is, what should a victim do if she finds out that intimate videos of her and her boyfriend are leaked after her phone was hacked? So in this case, the perpetrator's not the boyfriend here, is the hacker of the phone. Can I get a view, say, Simran?
So really a few things. I think first you will want to ascertain leak to where, right? Or to how many sites. So
Absolutely.
it's a painful task, but I think you might have to pull the image, right? And try to find out where it's gone, because then you will have to go through the process of contacting all these platforms to say, this was done without my consent, please take it down, or file a report accordingly. I think that is time sensitive because that helps to facilitate any takedowns that are required. I think the next thing is, if you know who did it, right, or the date of the hacking or some details, then you may want to seek the assistance of lawyers and police to see whether any recourse can be taken from that angle. But I think immediately addressing find out where it's gone and try to take that down, that will try to address the distress that you would feel in such a situation.
Okay. So we are coming to the end. We are a little out of time. And, at this juncture, having spoken about this topic, I think it'd be great if we could invite each one of our speakers, to leave us with one key takeaway on this topic of online harms. Simran, could I start with you?
I'd be shameless and say, please come to the SHE One-Stop Online Harm Center.
I don't
If
think
you
you're
have
shameless at
any
all.
questions, that's really why we're there, right? We're there to provide that resource for you and anyone who's experiencing online harms. And so we're not only there to provide help to victims after it's happened. What we're trying to do is also put out some public education. You all mentioned prevention is very important, right? We want to put out a series of programs to help people understand how to use the internet more safely, what certain apps features may be like, maybe understand the latest new trendy online harm that's taking place so that you can try and avoid it, to try and stay current. Just to really help people out there, because we spend so much time online, we should try and be safe as far as possible.
Christine.
I think the key thing or the message that I would like to convey is that, for victims of online harm, you are not alone. There are a whole range of support organizations or help and options that you can reach out to, right? Whether it is SHE, it is a lawyer, a trusted friend, or a counselor. So all these are options which are available to you. It is definitely scary, it's distressing, but in your own time, you should realize that you don't have to deal with this yourself. There are people out there who will be willing to help you, to guide you along, to point you in the right direction. So reach out.
Okay. Okay, I'm terribly sorry, speakers, but I've realized that there are some more questions, and I'm informed by the organizers that we have a little bit more time. I
Oh, sure.
hope it's
Yeah.
okay if we
Happy to
just take
address more,
a
yeah.
few more questions because they're all coming in. There's one question here which I thought perhaps is important, which is, so by just posting online on social platforms, the identity of someone with bad social behavior, so it's similar to our first scenario, and there's a purpose of embarrassing the person, would it be acceptable if it doesn't cross the line of doxing?
Yeah.
Christine?
I think this might be sort of the S.H.E road scenario where it's dangerous driving, you just want to call out the person, or certain opinions which may not be perhaps accurate or premised on correct facts. I think if that is the intention, to state it very factually, calling that person out, I don't think that is an issue that will amount to doxing.
Simran?
Yeah, you really have to look at the context, right? So if it's
Absolutely.
just saying, okay, something very factual. But in this day and age, I think
The prevailing culture is that you rarely see a factual statement put out there with someone's identity exposed and then nothing happened after that, right? So I think you know that if you are going to post someone's personal information online, and put any lines of, why did this person do this? I mean, how can this be? There will be some kind of response. Particularly if you have a lot of followers,
Yes.
or you're posting it on a very public forum, for example. So I think really thinking carefully about sharing other people's personal information, advisable in most cases.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're posting someone driving a car and you can't really see his face, and you just black out the car number and say, hey, everybody, try to drive safely today, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you are posting something very personal and about what this person is doing and his face, and certain identifying factors, and then you know what's going to likely happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
think twice lah.
Think twice, yeah, absolutely. So again, it's about that online culture and having that attitude of being more responsible online.
yeah, I mean, the
suppose.
only exception I can think of is really that this information that you're posting is already public knowledge.
Yes.
Maybe if you are the 100th person to out somebody, that's
Yeah.
perhaps not doxing because the
Absolutely.
tide of hatred is really like long over. I mean, I'm just joking. But
No
what it
problem.
comes down to is really
Yes, it's all about the context. There's a good question here that's been raised, and that's related to the relationship between what we are quite familiar with in the family courts, the personal protection order, versus the protection order. This question was about making a PPO and what we can do, but perhaps we could go into the difference between what a PPO is and a protection order is.
I'm not so sure I know the requirements
for
for
a PPO other than its family violence.
Yeah.
Right? And family violence can take different forms.
Yeah.
But then of course there's online harms which can in the way we live our lives today, right? I think if someone is being abusive to you online and they are your family member, it will very easily bleed into the real world. So they won't, your husband, for example, if he's abusing you, you do it online and then when he sees you at home, he'll do it face to face. Right? So I think the person who's asked the question has asked a very sensible one. Sometimes you have to look at both,
Yes.
particularly in
the realm of family violence, right?
In the realm of family violence, that's where we look at the PPO. Okay. There's this question relating to the procedure. Not necessarily the procedure, but really what goes on in the courtroom. So this person's asking, what if someone knows how to dramatize and be emotional to frame a person that it's harassment? Akin to gaslighting, I suppose. and this person deletes certain messages and only keeps the guy's messages and tries to change the context. So I can imagine this an unmeritorious claim, in the courts. What can I suppose the person facing this claim do? Christine, perhaps?
Well, I mean, I think as with most disputes in court, there
Yeah.
will be two sides to a story. So it is open to whoever's being accused of harassment to highlight the true circumstances and the context that there are these messages that were deleted. And if you look at it in context, there's really no intention to cause harassment or alarm or distress. And to essentially offer the other side of the coin and let the judge make the final decision.
Yeah, so you basically have the chance to explain and present your side of the story as well. So it's not just one-sided that the applicant goes there, tells a story that's perhaps even untrue, or has shades of untruth or incompleteness, and that's the end of it. So you do get the chance to say, no, if it is the case that it's not a complete picture that's being presented, then you can present that. I mean, again, it's a question of gathering the evidence. You have the same screenshots, you just take the complete one and put it in there and then show the judge, and as Christine said, the judge will decide which story is the truth now.
So everyone has their day in court. Well,
that's fair justice for you.
Fair justice, absolutely. Okay. Again, Simran, one question for you, and this is: can members of the public, volunteer at S.H.E?
Oh, of course, we'd be happy to take on volunteers. We're setting up now, and once we're ready to do a volunteer call, we'll put it out publicly. We really want our volunteers to come in and be meaningfully engaged in things like public education, helping with victims. And of course, we've got a whole bunch of legal volunteers from none other than Pro Bono Singapore as of today. Pro Bono Singapore. So yes, definitely keep an eye out. Information will be up on our website, which is www.she.org.sg.
Okay. There's one question that's pretty interesting. So if the harassment occurs in a large chat group, rather than on social media, does that make a difference? If instead of the usual case of me being flamed in the post,
I don't think it makes a difference. So I think, it can be from person A to person B, or from person A to 100 other people. And arguably, I think if it's posted in a chat group which has 100 or 1,000 readers, then the harm and the intention would be towards a certain side of the scale.
Yes.
Yeah, if the question is whether a chat group is considered online, yes, it is. So Telegram, WhatsApp, and all these are considered messaging services that are digital. So it's included now.
Okay, I think we'll take just two more questions. All right. And this one again is a little related to the procedure. I thought this one was interesting because one question here is what if the perpetrator is suspected to be suffering from mental illness? Would that mitigate the penalty that the perpetrator would face?
Well, I think if the person or the alleged perpetrator has a mental illness, there are certain thresholds to be crossed in order for it to amount to a legal defense. There's evidence that needs to be adduced, whether from a psychiatrist or a psychologist or an expert, essentially, on mental illnesses. I don't think it's saying that, oh, I have a mental illness and this is my excuse, I'm allowed to make all these threatening and abusive communications. So there are certain legal standards that needs to be met, evidence that needs to be presented in order for mental illnesses to amount to a legal defense. But otherwise, I think it might be challenging to say that, oh, just because of a mental illness, I'm allowed to do whatever I want.
Yeah, so just picking up on that, that's absolutely right. In order to be completely absolved and found not guilty, I think your mental impairment needs to be of such a degree that you can't even tell right from wrong. So it has to be serious, and you have to have an expert psychiatrist, for example. But then, of course, there's a level of mental illness or issues that you have that is doesn't affect your understanding of right and wrong, but it may have caused you to become extra suspicious
or paranoid or have an anger control issue. So they may or may not be relevant depending on the psychiatrist's assessment. So people who do feel that it's, let's say I'm better, I feel that my condition has actually impacted my conduct. There's a clear link between what I was undergoing at the time and the way I acted. You can try to reduce that evidence to the court. So it will not get you off, but it may well be taken into account in trying to achieve a fair outcome or mitigation or a sentence, as the case may be.
Okay. Simran, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bother you again.
Another one.
I'm being told by the organizers here that there are quite a few questions on what is S.H.E, she.
Okay.
Yeah. Perhaps I could invite you to give a further introduction on
Okay.
she.
Let's hope I can remember all
Yeah.
the details.
She
Thank
is a
you.
newly set up independent non-profit organization. It's a charity that really is trying to look at the improving women's advancement. So women and girls in Singapore, and we want to really focus on things like the day-to-day concerns of women, right? So we know from the white paper that came out last year that there are certain issues that many women of all ages and backgrounds all commonly try to deal with. So that's balancing caregiving duties, going to work, maybe having issues with not being treated equally or fairly at work, not being able to succeed at work. So these are quite what I would consider bread and butter issues for women, and we're going to try and help them. And of course, we want to look at girls as well, because they have the expectation of growing up in Singapore and looking forward to having to deal with these same challenges that are facing their older sisters as well. So I think that's where we would like to position ourselves. The way we want to do it is by community engagement. So we really want to talk to all the different groups of men, women, people in Singapore, try and understand how come these challenges and problems are existing. Are there any opportunities for maybe laws or regulation or employers to make some changes to address the issue? If there are, if we identify those opportunities, then we want to advocate about it. So we want to speak for every woman. Really. That's what she is, and that's what we hope to do.
Well, thank you very much, Simran. And thank you, Christine. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to bring our Q&A session to a close. And so at the end of this webinar, a survey form will pop up on your screen for your completion. Right? We appreciate your comments, as it will be useful for us to improve our future webinars. Now, there's one more webinar as part of the Law Awareness Weeks at CDC 2022 called Divorce and You, Civil, happening tomorrow at 7 p.m. So please scan the QR code or visit the website bit.ly/law CDC 2022 to find out more about the webinar. If you would like legal advice on any specific legal issue and you are keen to register for a legal clinic session, you may write to enquiry@probono.sg. Right? We would like to express our gratitude to Simran and Christine for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for
Thank you,
having
Derek.
us.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank all of you for joining us today, and we hope you have a great week ahead.